If you find yourself with a camera in your hand and want to learn how to use it, please subscribe to this channel, like the videos, comment below. Hi Photos family, today we're talking about frameworks and how they set up a good execution of a photograph. This framework is how I began to realize I tend to think through something, but also as I've been learning and improving my quality of images has even more so forced me to think this way so that I can be able to better fit the thought of style or image into the composition, the framework, and give the lighting the mood or be able to tell the story properly. So when we set our ISO on the camera, it has a lot of detail as to what it controls or its rating set to be ISO 100, 125, 160, 200. There are a lot of technical reasons and how the rating came about. But without getting into a lot of that detail, let's just keep it to this simple level that the ISO sets how contrasted the image can be. So there is a change to what the ISO will appear to be, and that would be by shutter speed. So ISO sets the contrast, let's say ratio, how dark the shadows are to how bright the highlights are. And shutter speed can change the, let's say, the amount of how much that contrast is washed out or how contrasted it is. So if you have photographs that look fairly good for contrast, but they kind of look cloudy because there's too much light coming into the photograph, then your shutter speed is probably too slow. And the shutter is staying open too long to allow the photograph to become washed out and look, well, not look like you want it to. Let's say it that way. The detail of your photograph is important to have a well set shutter speed, but if you have your ISO too low and you don't want the contrast to be so stark between dark shadows and highlights, then I should have taken a look at my lighting setup. This is actually more highlight and this is more shadow actually. The important detail there is so that you know exactly what you are shooting as far as the atmosphere and where shadows are and the light or lit area is and how that lights your subject. With knowing that, you will have better command over the contrasted nature of your image and the exposure overall as to whether your environment is more dark or bright, washed out. The other detail of using this framework and how it allows us to better execute a shot. Your aperture, when you think about your aperture and how you set it, what you want it to be, it will, if you think of aperture as setting your focus, and like ISO sets the contrast and shutter speed can fit that properly to your contrast or adjust it slightly one way or the other, then aperture is what sets your focus, because that determines really what is in focus and what is not in focus. So that's going to be your primary way of drawing somebody's eye to something. Even if they don't notice what is or is not in focus, their brain, their eyes will naturally want to be drawn, and their eyes will naturally go to what is in focus. It puts us mentally off if we look at something that should be in focus and it's not in focus. There are ways of drawing attention because of that small detailed fact, but the purpose of focus is to naturally draw someone's eye to the place of focus. And if the thing that is expected to be in focus is in focus, that's going to be pleasing to the viewer. The other thing that we are talking about of ISO sets the contrast and shutter speed kind of adjusts or fits that to the point of what the contrast should be in your photograph. Aperture sets the focus, but then composition is what adjusts the focus as well. So if there are several things in focus, but you want to draw your viewers' attention to the fact that it's not just the tree that your subject is standing next to that you want them to focus on, it's your subject, then composition of your photograph is going to be the secondary thing which draws your viewer to look at your subject instead of the support to your subject. And that's why composition is what fits the focus into your final composition, not just composition itself, or not just aperture itself. Explanation there of ISO, shutter speed, aperture, and composition I hope is helpful, because the better those four basic details of a photograph are formed together, the more pleasing, the quickly understood, the better the pull into that realm that you will have in that photograph. That wraps up our discussion today of frameworks and how that helps us execute a better photograph. So thank you so much for watching. Join us next time as we continue to talk about photography and drawing our skills and level of learning to the next higher height. Thank you so much for watching. Give us a comment down below and give us a thumbs up also. Subscribe to join our Photos family. We'd love to have you. God bless.